The professional accounting system of the United States and the United Kingdom are often treated as the reference models in international discussions. Canada, unfortunately, is frequently neglected. Despite having one of the largest populations of professional accountants in the world, Canada developed a system without a single national license, without a unified national qualification, and without a centralized professional authority. This structure is very strange to outsiders. It's not incidental. It's the result of historical choice, constitutional arrangements, and institutional competition among professional bodies. My name is Lin. I'm an accountant with a PhD in accounting. Today, I would like to share the historical origins of Canada's distinctive system of professional accountancy. Before proceeding, I would like to clarify the scope of this talk. This talk is purely for historical issues. It's not professional advice. It's not legal advice. A brief disclosure, I do not represent any professional body and I aim to remain historically neutral. However, my professional background may still induce some intended preconception. I welcome corrections or alternative interpretations. Let's start. First, what is exactly professional accountancy? The concept of professional accountants differs from that of individuals who use accounting techniques. Accounting techniques themselves are ancient. Scholars have traced accounting practices to early civilizations, including Egypt and South Asia. For most of the history, however, accounting existed without professional accountants. Bookkeeping and cost calculation were carried out by clergy, merchants, engineers, landowners, and public officials. However, these people were not professional accountants. At the same time, modern professional accountants often do much more than technical accounting. They work in advisory, managerial, and technological roles. Professional accountancy therefore has not been defined by accounting expertise. Instead, it has depended on institutional authority. That authority is recognized by law and sustained through market acceptance. Historically, this authority emerged when accountants organized themselves to protect defined areas of practice. For example, in 19th century Scotland, the receivers united to form the first accounting profession as a chartered accountant. I will mention this word many times later. This Scottish model was later borrowed by accountants in other countries, including Canada. The modern models of professional accountancy could be roughly classified into three major paradigms. The first one is the Scottish legacy. It relies on the professional bodies. Students need to learn theories and practice to pass exams and join a professional body first as a former member to use the designation, and then, if he or she wants to provide service to the public, an additional license must be acquired from the professional body. Therefore, membership is an implicit requirement for licensing. Its tradition is durable, especially in the UK and the provinces of Canada. The New York legacy relies on the state. Students must fulfill the requirements set by the state, which include passing exams and gaining experience to obtain a license. If desired, there are professional associations to join, but membership is not mandatory, simple, democratic, with liberty. The next one is continental legacy. It relies on the state, but with more control. Students must first acquire a license from state, again exam and experience. Then they must join a government-controlled organization. So let's see how Canada fit into this picture. First, While inspired by Scottish chartered accountants, the Canadian accountants worked in a different constitutional context from the British one. And unlike the UK, Canada is a federal state. Political authority is divided between the federal government and the provinces. Second, because each province can make their own decisions in professional regulation, as a result, the regulatory environment becomes very complex and it differs among provinces. Third, unlike the US or the continental countries, Canadian provinces allowed multiple accounting bodies to coexist and to compete. Finally, language policies and distinct legal frameworks, especially in Quebec, involved in policymaking regarding professions. Together, these factors produce a professional structure that differs from many other jurisdictions. First of all, let's talk about the Constitution. Under the once British North American Act of 1867, authority over the property and civil rights was assigned to the provinces. Courts later interpreted this authority to include the regulation of professions. So province will also control over municipal institutions and education. As a result, provincial government can decide who can audit these municipal governments, schools, and other provincially regulated entities. The federal government retains authority over matters of national and international concern. This includes the incorporation of organizations dealing with the national issues. Therefore, this structure enabled the province to develop their own approach to organizing professional accountants. They can allow or disallow incorporating new professional bodies. They can delegate regulatory authority to professional bodies. They can grant exclusive rights to use certain designations, such as CA, CGA, or CPA, or they can decide who can perform specific services. The federal government could incorporate national associations. Like I said, they can provide coordination and visibility. However, these federal organizations didn't have the right to override provincial controls. So the Canadian model becomes clearer when we can compare it with other countries. First, on the controlling side, Canada resembles the United States that regional government regulates professional accountants, not the central government. However, there is an important difference. The United States does not share the British legacy of privileged professional bodies. Licensing in America is handled by state agencies like Office of Professions, while in Canada, provinces delegate qualifications and regulations to professional bodies. Canada also shares similarities with the United Kingdom. In both countries, autonomous professional organizations manage examinations and training. However, the United Kingdom developed a centralized system for recognizing professional bodies nationwide. For example, the chartered accountant, the ACCA and the CMA or CIPFA, they all get chartered from the Privy Council instead of regional government. However, in Canada, each Canadian province could only recognize professional bodies within its borders. This might make a departure from the earlier British practice. By contrast, some countries, maybe in the continental or in East Asia, they follow a different model altogether. In those countries, a central government authority licenses all the accountants. So when we understand this framework, so we can try to illustrate the concept with historical events. Begin in 1879, accountants in Canada sought formal recognition through public incorporation. A public incorporation means they had a petition with the provincial government or federal government so that the government can grant some designation to them and allow them to incorporate a recognized organization to issue such designation. The earlier successors are the Montreal, Ontario, and Manitoba, Nova Scotia. I will get back to the Montreal Association when we talk about the Quebec. And also in this period, a national organization was incorporated by some petitions in 1902. This is on the federal level instead of the provincial level. Name was the Dominion Association of Chartered Accountants, but it created a big problem. Do the members of Dominion Association of Chartered Accountants able to use the designation of chartered accountant? So after a prolonged dispute in 1909, the answer was no. The Dominion Association was not able to grant any designation because it was not a provincial body who gained the power from a provincial government. As a result, it was reformed into a coordinating federal body for the provincial chartered accountants, and the provincial chartered accountants bodies retain their power and exclusive power to use the designation of the chartered accountants. The CA is so valuable and everyone wants to defend it with all cost. And this result to the structure that we know today. The provincial designation was retained as a provincial issue and the privilege was limited to issuing province. When today it's a CPA. When a CPA moves from one province to another, he or she need to apply for CPA designation in the new province from the provincial body. Although modern agreement now exists that provincial bodies accept CPA from another province, provincial direction still remains. This structure continues today. As noted earlier, provinces control provincial regulations. As a result, regulatory approach differs across the country. In some provinces, such as British Columbia, they adopt a relatively unified model. So by 1920s, most public accountants were within the Chartered Accountants Institute. In other provinces, for example, Ontario and Quebec, the government allowed additional accounting bodies because they can decide who can audit the municipal finance or the schools. They can decide that the accountant who was not a CA can do this work. And also tax and advisory services were not restricted at all. This condition created spaces for new provincial pathways. But why didn't all accountants just join the CA? Because they couldn't. The early chartered accountancy had restrictive but reasonable entry requirements. Candidates need to be trained by practicing chartered accountants. The number of training positions was capped at 2 to 3. This requirement served provincial goals, such as quality control. For example, if a CA had 10 to 11 apprentices, who can be sure that this CA can train them in the same time? However, they restricted access for many capable accountants. In response, these accountants who were excluded formed alternative organizations to gain their legitimacy and recognition. Ontario provides a helpful illustration of the emergence of professional bodies. The earliest, as we know, were the chartered accountants. They set up in 1879 and they secured their charter in 1883. A second group is the Association of Audit Accountants and Auditors of Ontario. It later adopted the Certified Public Accountant designation before merged with Chartered Accountants. We will talk about this organization later. It's very interesting organization. And the third one was the Certified General Accountants. Early Certified General Accountants already worked in the province for many years, but they didn't organize themselves into professional bodies. And later on, they formed the professional bodies. The first one merged with the CPA, and the later one merged a state as an independent body until it merged into the current CPA profession. Fourth group was the cost and management accounting. This organization changed them several times because they were trying to adapt to the change of the society, and they also survived until the final merge. And these are the main actors I will introduce one by one later. Let's see. The first one was the general accountant. At the start, they want a name that is the Canadian Accountants Association. However, this name was not politically viable because the Canadian accountants sound like CA when you abbreviate it. So they had to change the name to the General Accountants Association when they attempt to incorporate them at the federal level. This organization held examinations for the Certified General Accountants designation. They didn't have a provincial recognition at the start, but they are very strong in recruiting new students because the students can just pass the exam. They do not need to work under a chartered accountant. Later on, experience requirements were added, but still, a student do not have to work in a accounting firm to get all the experience. So that this structure allowed individuals without a professional connection to the firm to pursue recognition. Many early CGAs worked in the industry. Over time, more and more CGA entered public practice. And the CGA members incorporated many professional bodies since 1970. Onward, this body secure legal recognition and regulatory authority. Before the unification, CGA was the second largest accounting body in Canada, just behind the chartered accountants. More broadly, CGA represents an alternative model which focused on examinations instead of very strict, very exclusive experience requirement, especially in accounting firms. The next body I want to talk about is a certified management accountant. That is a very interesting pathway because before the Great War, cost accounting was not seen as a work for the chartered accountants. Because chartered accountants usually work in the external firms instead of work with the engineers in the industry. So costing was seen as a work of the engineers, a work of the merchants, or a work of the supervisors. However, the war changed this situation. During the war, the cost information is very, very important for deciding which product to manufacture. And it's very important for calculating income tax during the war. So after the war in 1919, cost specialists organized in the United Kingdom and in the United States. Later, both of them developed into modern management institutions, such as in the United Kingdom, it's a CMA, in the United States, it's an IMA. So from the point of the chartered accountants, they want to have an organization that they can talk about accounting, but they do not want an organization that could become a professional body and challenging the power of chartered accountants. So they themselves incorporated the chartered the Canadian Society of Cost Accountants at the federal level. However, this plan was not a success because just in 1927, the new Canadian Society of Cost Accountants started to provide examinations and to recruit new members. And later on, this organization tried to incorporate themselves in different provinces to become a provincial professional body. In some provinces, the chartered accountant welcomed them because they believe that these cost accountants were not competitor to them because they work in the industry. But in some other provinces, such as British Columbia, they resisted since they already had a unified accounting profession. So with some success and with some unsuccess, the this cost accountant evolved and survived. Especially they have tried to change their focus because in the past they focused on cost because cost was the most important thing in the manufacturer. But later on they found that they need more measurement skills and techniques. So they refocused from cost to measurement. And also they changed their designation from the registered industrial accountant to certified management accountant to rebrand themselves and evolve with the society. They eventually grew into the third largest professional bodies in Canada and before the final merge. The next one is a very, very interesting group of accountants. From the start, there were some accountants, some of them, I believe, had passed the CGA program so that they already have a CGA designation. But they want a professional body of their own, so they incorporate an association in Ontario called the Association of Accountants and Auditors of Ontario. And they are not satisfied with the designation licentiate in accounting. So they applied to change their designation to the CPA, just like in America. But it was not a success. Still, they got a new designation called the Incorporated Public Accountants. This name is good because there were incorporated accountants in the British Empire. But they are not still satisfied, so they petitioned again, and in 1936 they got the great golden designation of certified public accountants. And then to consolidate their strength, they are trying to absorb as many members as possible without lowering their practicing standard. So they absorbed the CGA in Ontario and they absorbed the independent public accountants in Ontario. So with these efforts, they had a share of authority over public accounting and served in the Public Accounting Council of Ontario with chartered accountants. And then they are trying to make CPA a national movement. So use Ontario as a base. The association supported CPA organizations in other provinces, and they try to incorporate in Newfoundland, in Manitoba, and later on they try to found their federal level institute as a Canadian Institute of Certified Public Accountants. No chartered accountant want this organization because they are trying to use the power, the designation similar to the United States to compete in Canada. So in many provinces, the chartered accountants try to lobby the government to block the attempts to incorporate a provincial body of CPA. For example, in Nova Scotia, the CPA had to change name to register the public accountants to get their incorporation success. And in Saskatchewan, they failed for the first time, but they come back the next year and get a success. In Alberta, they didn't get any success, but a chartered accountant in Alberta tried to mitigate the competition, so they decided that all the CPA in Alberta can just join the chartered accountant, so there will not be a competition. And in British Columbia, the chartered accountant was very, very successful at the start, so they just lobbied the government to have a law to ban anyone from using the designation of CPA. But defending each province in a town is very, very difficult because of each province has their political motions to allow or disallow the new incorporation of CPA associations. From the chartered accountant's point of view, they need to change their strategy. So they just try to think from the other side. If it's possible to eliminate the competition by just merge with CPA Ontario, and they did it. So all the CPA in Ontario can join CA, and CA control the CPA association in Ontario. Without Ontario organization to provide examination, provide institutional support, as the CPA association could not expand or could not incorporate in new provinces. So that's the end of the CPA movement. This case highlights that the provincial bodies were really powerful, especially for the CPA. They were powerful. They gained success very early in their own province, and then they expand. Of course, the end of the CPA movement does not imply that they failed. No, instead, the CPA joined the CA bodies and continued a successful career. So after this knowledge, we can finally discuss Quebec, because Quebec is the most complex issue. First off, I would like to point out that Quebec is a powerhouse of accountants on its own. The Quebecois order had twice as many members as the French order. So let's back from the history of Quebec. After British acquisition of New France, Quebec developed under a mixed legal system, the criminal with the common law and the civil with the civil code until today. And in the respect of language, French remains the language of the population, although the language policy evolved gradually. At the first, English language was the only administrative in the 19th century, but later on, French gained stronger legal recognition over time. By the late 20th century, French became the only language of work within Quebec's regulatory system. So our accounting profession evolved within this context. The first association is the Association of Accountants of Montreal. This association was English speaking, and it was founded by a handful of accountants with close link to the Scottish Chartered Accountants. In 1902, the Institute of Accountants and Auditors of the Province of Quebec was formed by linguistically mixed accountants from Montreal. The Association of Accountants of Montreal, of course, petitioned against this motion, But the Quebec government decided that it's great to have the new IAAPQ because the AM do not have many members in French name. Or of course, in French name or English name is not accurate from historical research, but it was the reason that the government had that decision. Later on, another association emerged. I believe this accountant had some connection with general accountants. They had the designation of certified general accountant, but they formed their own association, and they use designation of also licentiate in accounting in 1920. And then this group evolved into the certified public accountant of province of Quebec. After the Second World War, the government facilitated a consolidation. This aim is all the public accountants shall be under the same legal framework, and let's put them all under the banner of chartered accountants. So now the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Province of Quebec is built. During the same period, the CGA and the CMA they start to incorporate in Quebec, making their own provincial bodies, and these provincial bodies coexisted, but with different level of control on themselves. In 1973, the provincial code was issued by the Quebec government. This is a big change because after that, the government have very, very direct control on the provincial bodies. The government can decide what's their ethical code, how should this organization be governed, and so on. Still, even as that, the government had strict control on these professional orders. They are still in much degree autonomous. It's not something like the professional bodies in Europe or in East Asia. And in addition, the Charter of French language was published, and this consolidated the role of the French language in professional domain. Overall, in the 1970s, proficiency in French language became a requirement for most professional accountants in Quebec. And as the government had much power, the government can decide we just change this professional body's names. We change them from the institute to the professional corporations in 1973, and we changed the professional corporation to order in 1994. And in 2012, the three accounting board orders merged into the current order, the Ordre des Comptables Professionnels Agréés du Québec. Yeah, there is no English name because of the Charter of French language. In summary, in addition to shared national features, Quebec has three distinctive characteristics. First, professional incorporation was not merely a professional issue, but also a tool for the inclusion policy. Second, the government played an active role in shaping the profession, mergers, name changes, and enforcing governance. Third, language requirements were formally imposed, while in other provinces language capacity was implied by the examination. So Quebec therefore represents a distinct yet integrated model. In 2010, in each province, the chartered accountants, the certified general accountants, and the certified management accountants had merged into unified provincial CPA bodies. a federal coordinating entity, the CPA Canada was subsequently established. Despite national coordination, provincial authority in Canada remains primarily provincial. Licensing, discipline, and ethical regulation are exercised by provincial bodies. CP Canada performed coordinating functions including examination development, standard setting collaboration, and international mutual recognition. Historically, individual CPAs must hold membership in CP Canada, although indirectly through their provincial bodies. The next move is CP Canada has announced a scheme that all CPAs could join CP Canada as individual members at a voluntary basis. This move clearly departs from history and makes a new page of Canadian accounting profession, but this issue should be left to future historians. The central historical facts and years were extracted from the paper by Dr. Richardson, a reputable professor in Canadian historical research and accounting. When clearance is needed, I read historical provincial acts from the Canadian Legal Information Institute. Nevertheless, all errors remain my own. Thank you for your attention. I welcome comments and discussion.